Here we go.
Hello, good morning. This is Jim McCarthy. I want to call the meeting to order for the Executive Board of the MetroPlan on March 2nd, 2022. So could we have roll call, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair McCarthy and members of the board. Just a couple of reminders before we start roll call. This meeting is being recorded and will be available online by the end of the week. If you currently are not on mute, please take a moment to do so. And for your convenience, a link to the meeting packet is located in the chat function. All right, starting with roll call for our board members, Jim McCarthy.
I am here.
Geronimo Vasquez.
Present.
Teresa Horstman. Austin Aslan. Tony Williams.
Present.
Regina Salas.
Present.
Jesse Thompson.
Here.
Judy Begay. Becky Daggett. All right, moving on to MetroPlan staff. Jeff Miles Melbeck.
Here.
David Wessel.
Present.
Rosie Ware. Present. And myself, Mandia Gonzalez. And as mentioned earlier, we do have some guests in attendance. I currently see Mirna Bondoc from ADOT, Vinny Gallegos from SIMPO, and Ed Stillings from FHWA. Is there anybody else I missed? All right, thank you all.
Well, thank you, Mandia. Do we have any public comment today?
We do not.
Okay, thank you. So the next item is approval of minutes. Does anyone have any comments on minutes? I read them over. They look pretty good to me. Any other comments? Could I get a motion to approve the minutes from the February 2nd meeting? Well, I'll move that we approve the minutes of the regular meeting, February 2nd, as written. Could I get a second?
I'll second that, Mr. Chair. Regina.
Thank you, Regina Salas. Any more discussion? All those in favor to approve the minutes as is, please say aye.
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 Any nays? That motion approves unanimously. Austin Aslan, are you here on the line?
No, I'm not.
You obviously are. I didn't hear you say yes when we did roll call, so I was just double checking. Thank you. Thanks
Yeah, I was having some issues getting on using the link, but I finally used the meeting ID to pop through. Sorry about that.
Well, I guess you're a success. We don't have anything on the consent agenda today. So now we're down to Roman numeral 3, which is general business. I believe Dave Wessel is going to give us a presentation on Stride Forward. So Dave, take her away. Thank you.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the Executive Board. I've got a brief presentation I'm going to share with you now and give you an update on where we stand with progress on Stride Forward. Could everybody see my screen?
We can, and incidentally, I don't have a way to see if, I guess I could open my chat. So if people have a comment or a question, you can put it in the chat or just, we're a small group, we're informal. Just, interrupt, be polite, but, when it makes sense. All right, Dave, go ahead. I guess I just interrupted you.
And my feelings are not hurt, Mr. Chair, but thank you. So as part of Stride Forward, you've heard us talk about onward and upward, our two scenarios. These scenarios are going to be based on the 2045 population. And I just want to introduce you to those control totals for population and employment. The Technical Advisory Committee has introduced those, has approved those. So using projections from the State Demographer's Office through the Arizona Commerce Authority. We're using an average of a medium and a high projection for the city. That comes about 95,000 people in 2045. And then working with the county, looking at prospective build out in all the various areas like Belmont and Doney Park, and applying growth rates similar to those derived from the demographer's office. We're looking at a population of about 25,000. So almost 120,000 people in the region projected for 2045. And then at the bottom of this chart, you can see, the populations using a similar method for 2040 and how those compare to what we were projecting back in 2013. So
Excuse me,
just
Dave.
yes.
Your presentation is not showing,
Oh,
at least on my end. I'll confirm that with
I
everybody
see it.
else. Oh, very strange.
I see
Okay,
it.
my apologies.
okay. But thank you, Mandy. I'm sorry that you can't see it. It's really compelling. You're missing a lot. So the projections from the past are very similar, as you can see, about 116,000, with a slight shift going forward into from the county into the city. And that's really based on, again, the demographer's work, as well as a little finer drilling down with county staff into county projections. On the employment side, working with city and county staff, both on the planning and the economic development side, we looked at historic population to employment ratios, and using that came up with about a 65,000 employment projection, and it'll be distributed across these sectors. You can see in red, slight decrease in construction and public administration, and a fairly significant decrease in share retail trade, with those shifting to education and health, arts and hospitality, and manufacturing, again, based on discussions with city and county staff. I thought as background, it is maybe relevant for you to know what our build out projection is. And this is really holding from the past RTP and regional plan work. We looked at several things to arrive at this 150,000 figure for build out. We looked at zoning, kind of did a scrape off if we were to build to zoning at kind of a low and a high end capacity or capability. We looked at the regional plan, we looked at water capacity, and then we looked at just some general kind of straight line projections. Looked at the effect of all those and kind of averaged them out. And to be kind of full disclosure, we actually took a number a little bit lower than the average. And I will be honest, that was for political reasons. So that 150,000 at the time we put this together was around doubling the population at the time. And going above that was seen as going to be problematic, that we would be kind of stuck on that number for a while because of political or public pushback. And we received then and are receiving now some concern about the prospect of building out to 150,000. That said, if we look at what we're projecting, 120,000 for 2045, it leaves us about 30,000 going forward. And here's just for reference, a couple growth rates, again, pulled from more or less the demographer's office to how long we have to build out and what year that would be. And that 20,091, that's essentially what we were projecting 5 and 10 years ago. So that build out figure was used for calculating the capacity of land areas in different locations, and affects how we will distribute growth. for those control totals. So that's what I have for you today on the projections. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about public involvement, but I'm going to pause here and see if anybody has questions about our projections. Okay, not hearing any, I'll continue on. Thank you. So as I mentioned, the next steps are, I'm sorry, this was from the TAC meeting. I should have struck this. The TAC approved these, as I mentioned. We'll convert these to dwelling units and land uses, distribute them across the region. Again, with that kind of build out as a controlling factor, and those will be used in our modeling efforts. Important point to make is the hospital relocation will be assumed in both scenarios. And so we will be seeing a shift from past projections, a shift in growth patterns as a result of the hospital. From a public outreach perspective, some things have updated since then. Since this last report, you can see the random sample survey. We had 629 responses. We have an online survey that received 640 responses. Our stakeholder outreach stands about where you see it now. We've had one group failed to have a quorum, and another group, another group did not have time on the agenda for us. But we do have a few more meetings scheduled, and we're going to, at these meetings, we've asked just a couple of questions. And so we're going to put those questions out in a survey to the balance of that list of 230 or so that we've introduced to you before. Our social media is climbing slowly in terms of followers, but you can see we've had almost 25,000 views of posts and ads. So we are getting quite a bit of exposure, and the visits to the website are growing. I want to now show you some results from the online survey. We're still in the process of reducing that data, doing the cross tabulations for things like area and different demographic facts. But these first two questions were similar to the random sample survey. We looked, just to see how those compared. So you see here, driving is still the predominant mode of travel. That tracks fairly well with the random sample survey. Bicycling is a little overrepresented in this group, which is pretty typical for online surveys in Flagstaff. In terms of how well people track or rate the current transportation system, again, very similar to the random sample survey. Most people see it as performing well or very well, but a little more skewed to dissatisfied with the system. And again, I think that's in part due to the issues I think we're all familiar with relative to the bicycling facilities. We did ask them about their satisfaction with different services, and this is again a sample. Some concerns with transit. I think telling on these two graphs is the level of don't know. At 30%, don't know the frequency, almost 16%. Don't know the proximity of transit service to them. So there's some kind of a room for education there. And I think the level of modest dissatisfaction is could be telling to the lack of the perceived lack of coverage in some areas. We asked about the number of satisfactions, the number of sidewalks and crosswalks, as well as bike lanes and trails. Again, you can see the levels of dissatisfaction above 30, almost 40%. And how are we going to use this? I think this is all this information as we look at the performance of our current system and look at the performance of our proposed systems in the future. This will help us gauge, are we addressing some of these concerns that we're hearing about? We asked people if they drove as a necessity, 89%, sometimes 89% said they sometimes did. We asked if they drove for perceptions of safety, and 68% said sometimes they did. So we dug into that a bit and asked them what were those reasons. And distance and time relative to perception of the necessity was by far the largest, but also carrying packages and cargo, making multiple stops were a concern. As far as safety, is concerns about the weather, concerns about being a crash, either walking or biking, or just a desire to have the safety equipment. We're all listed as important or very important. Again, as we lay out our future transportation systems, as well as the land use that supports them or supported by them, how well are we addressing some of these issues or concerns? We did ask relative to that land use question. You may recall we asked in the random sample survey if you would move to consider moving, or if you preferred rather living in a community that was had smaller homes closer together within walking distance to shops and restaurants, or if you preferred larger lots that for which you had to drive. So we dug into that a little bit deeper in terms of responses to how you respond or consider moving to those communities. And you can see if we had 3- and 4-story apartment buildings, much less likely to choose, almost 46%. And if you went to 5- to 6-story apartment buildings with first floor retail, it's 59%. When we asked about duplexes and fourplexes, that number was down around 25%. So, again, this is not surprising to anybody here in terms of what the reaction to density is. But again, this helps us, review our alternatives and get a sense of how to set those up. We did ask questions about landscaping and parks and transit, and both of those had favorable ratings in terms of more likely to choose. So then we were out to I'll pause there. Like I said, we're still going through the crosstabs and other things. We'll put together a report and post that to our website. Just want to see, before I talk about the stakeholder input received to date, if anybody has questions on that survey.
I'm not seeing anything in chat.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, we've been out, as I said, to almost a dozen groups, and about that included about 120 people amongst them. And we asked kind of an ice-breaking question. One of our objectives here is to help us define our vision of building the finest transportation system in the country. So we asked, where have you experienced the finest transportation system of your experience? A lot of stuff about San Francisco, Chicago, New York, Europe, in terms of those large transit systems, Flagstaff, the Netherlands, Minneapolis, about their excellent trail bike systems. And then the places we heard about, I just referenced. And really a lot of it was because they were easy to use and easy to get around to places. They were well connected. Again, not surprising, but just kind of a softball question to start digging into that. And then we asked people, what are the questions through this process of Stride Forward that you would like to see answered? And what's going to be the future of traffic and the capacity to serve traffic? How are we reaching out to communities of race or those that are traditionally underrepresented? What's growth going to look like, and how are we going to accommodate it? What are we going to do about safety? How are we going to improve safety, particularly for pedestrians and bicycles? And then, how are we going to manage those vehicle miles of travel, the VMT? Concerns or questions about the carbon neutrality plan goal of holding that constant to 2019 levels. As I mentioned, we're going to kind of put these questions out to the stakeholders in I believe it's going to be like a Survey Monkey tool to make sure that we're reaching out to all of them. And then we're going to wrap up our kind of round one. So the rest of the project, the Stride Forward project, is on budget, on schedule, on time. We're developing the onward scenario right now, and hope in the coming 2 to 4 weeks to start getting performance metrics pulled from that. Miles, I think I'll look to you. Do you want to give an update on the sustainability toolbox change order?
Thanks, Dave. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, as you may recall, and before I do that, I'm going to just take a little side moment here because I'm looking at our newest board member, Tony Williams from Coconino Community College. Tony Williams came to us through Mountain Line. So Mr. Williams is representing Mountain Line on the MetroPlan board and also works as the Vice President of Student Support Services at CCC. And I apologize for not introducing you just at the beginning. I will tell other board members that you and I had a great meeting about an hour yesterday with an orientation. I got to know each other a little bit and really appreciate you being here. And before I answer Dave's question, and I appreciate the teeing it up, Dave. Mr. Williams, is there anything that you wanted to say?
Miles, thank you. And Chairman McCarthy, appreciate serving on this board. And I had a really good meeting with Miles yesterday and feel like I have a good understanding of the mission and purpose of the MetroPlan board of directors. And really just glad to be here and be a part of this. So I'm looking forward to that connection and with my work with the board of directors for Mountain Line as well. So thank you for having me and I appreciate being here.
Well, I used to say when I did some boating, welcome aboard, sir.
Okay. To answer Dave's question, as most of our board members will recall, we went through a process of awarding funding to the sustainability program at the city of Flagstaff. And the idea there is to bring a sustainability toolbox, more tools for measuring vehicle miles traveled, for measuring emissions, for looking at different ways of doing transportation projects in the area. And we are somewhat weaving that effort and synergizing, I would say, with the sustainability program in partnership by expanding the scope of Stride Forward. And we're working now to bring somebody on board to enhance that work and deliver what the sustainability program requested of us. So we will have more information on that soon. Right now, I just wanted to let you know that we're still in process. And Dave, was there anything else that you felt needed to be covered?
No, I think that suffices. Thank you, Miles. And that concludes my presentation.
Well, does anybody have any questions on Stride Forward before we move on? Hearing none, we'll go to item 3B, which is the Coordinated Public Transit Human Services Transportation Plan. And Dave, you're going to do this one too.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. We call this the coordinated plan because it's a mouthful otherwise. And the coordinated plan really is directed towards services for the elderly and disabled, and to a lesser extent, the low income, and working to connect those human services to those populations and getting them the mobility they need by connecting them to public transit, either, ideally to the fixed route system or through the paratransit system. And in order to do that and have access to the funding stream, which is called, Section 5310 and administered by ADOT, it's required to have a plan, and those plans are generally put together through the MPO. But we have entered into an IGA with Mountain Line, who's providing, the phrase is mobility management, and Estella Hollander there is their mobility manager. So we coordinate with Mountain Line on that, and they really do the bulk of the work. And they do that through a coordinated mobility council, which is made up of these human service providers. And in order to receive funds, these providers need to have their projects identified in a coordinated plan. And those projects range from capital improvements or capital purchases primarily, including the purchase of vehicles or operations to support the administration of some programs. So the plan this year is called a minor update. There's a major update coming next year. Minor updates, which again we're considering today, are really just updating of demographic information, updating the vehicles that are in the community at their ownership and the status of their liens against them. And there's really kind of the primary updates. And so that's what we've seen. What we have here, if you'll stop scrolling, you see some of the projects that are in year 2 of the current grant cycle that would be looking to, these different organizations be looking to apply for. So NAU has their senior companion program. They're looking for some operating funds. Quality Connections is looking to purchase a vehicle. Mountain Line has a number of programs I think many of you are familiar with through either reports or the time you have respectively served on their board to support their taxi programs, the ADA Plus program, and some other activities. So gives you a good example of the types of projects and the amount of funds that we're looking to fund through this plan. So today we're looking for adoption by the board of this plan. The Coordinated Mobility Council took action on it and supported it, as did the Technical Advisory Committee. And this will later go to the Mountain Line Board as well. So, Mr. Chair, that concludes my presentation, and be happy to answer any questions for you.
Thank you, Dave. I did notice when I was reading it on page 43, it says bookmark not defined. That sounds like a pretty easy thing to fix. So maybe you can take a look at that.
Okay, thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Yeah, and I don't think we need to hold up approval of this for that very minor typographical thing. Do any of the other board members have questions or comments on this? If not, could I get a motion to approve the Coordinated Public Transit Human Services Transportation Plan with that little minor change?
Chairman McCarthy, this is Tony Williams. I move to adopt the 2022 MetroPlan Mountain Line Coordinated Public Transit Human Services Transportation Plan update.
Well, thank you. You're getting right into it. Can we get a second?
Second.
Who was
Second.
that? Yeah, is it Geronimo? So we have a second by Geronimo, and Tony Williams moved. Do we have any further discussion? All those in favor of the approval, please say aye.
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 Aye, and are there any noes on this? So that passes unanimously. Thank you. The next one, Miles Melbeck is going to give us an update on federal and state funding, which is item 3C. So Miles, go for it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I've got a brief PowerPoint, just a few slides to illustrate some points. There is a lot to share. And as you all know, much is happening with federal and state funding. House Bill 2396, that's the $50 million funding request for Greater Arizona, has had significant motion. And as reported last month, Councilmember Salas attended a hearing of the House Transportation Subcommittee, and the bill passed from that committee. And I want to point out that Kevin Adam, the legislative liaison for the Rural Transportation Advocacy Council, and I know, Mr. Williams, you're new to the room. Rural Transportation Advocacy Council is we known as RTAC, and works to bring transportation funding to Greater Arizona outside of the Tucson and Phoenix areas. And Councilmember Salas serves as a board member to RTAC, and Supervisor Vasquez is an alternate to that board. So we're fully covered in terms of being connected with different organizations at the state. So with that as background, and I will give Kevin and invite Kevin and Councilmember Salas to speak certainly during this presentation. I'd just like to give an update first. We learned that the House Appropriations Chair, Regina Cobb, was opposed to funding local projects. Essentially, she wants all projects to be on state-managed roadways. And we had $50 million of essentially local projects. So it was a real conundrum. And the Rural Transportation Advocacy Council, RTAC, was faced with what I'm calling an 11th hour choice of either pushing through as it was, which seemed like a very small chance, abandoning the request altogether or amending the request. And I want to really recognize Kevin Adam, the RTAC legislative liaison, because he had to deal with this change. And just to put some things in perspective, RTAC is made up of 11 organizations. Each of those organizations is made up of more organizations, like MetroPlan is 5. So altogether, you know, we're talking about 66 different organizations, perhaps, probably more than that, Kevin could tell you. And it took months to come up with a consensus list. And then we had to adapt within a few days, really, or let it go. So again, Kevin is here and can provide perspective. Councilmember Salas has been very involved. I first want to share this. The bad news is that MetroPlan's $2.6 million request for the Lone Tree Corridor, that funding is out. The good news is that there's a $9 million request for pavement preservation on 180. And I'm going to scroll down in the slide here and show you these two projects. And I'll just start with a $14 million request for a project in Coconino County. It's outside of the MetroPlan boundary. However, it's for one of our member agencies, and it's a very important project. So there's also a project from Snowball Road along 180 out to Deadman Flat Road, and that's $9 million. So altogether, we're approaching $25 million of potential funding to this area. And while it's not perhaps the project we wanted, a Lone Tree Corridor, I have a hard time not being enthusiastic about the prospect of an additional $20-some million for our member agencies. And I also want to say this, we need a win. I think we really need a win. House Bill 2396 isn't the end, it's really the beginning. And our ability to establish momentum in bringing funding to Greater Arizona, you know, in general, and MetroPlan in particular, I mean, that's really the long game. And Chair Cobb will be moving on eventually, And once we demonstrate success with this approach, we can continue to pursue other approaches. I also want to be clear that funding has not been approved. So I'm not here saying that almost $25 million is coming to our area imminently. It has not yet been passed. However, going to continue to work on it. And with all that as background, I'd like to take a moment to see if Councilmember Salas or Kevin Adam, let's start with you, Mr. Chair, would like to share something.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Councilmember Salas, would you like to have a moment to speak first, or?
Yes, thank you. Yes, again, it's one of those experiences. We thought we had an initial success at the transportation committee, being voted 11, I think it was an 11-1 to put it forward to the appropriations committee. But Kevin knew, thanks to Kevin's astute political knowledge in the Valley at the legislature, Kevin knew, and even our sponsor, Representative Don, that the chair of the appropriations committee, whose name is also Regina Cobb, was vehemently averse to local projects. And there were some other legislators in the appropriations committee who shared that sentiment. So, and with Kevin Adams' leadership, we were able to pivot. I have to admit that when I got the word from Kevin that our project, among including 31 other projects, recall there were 36 projects total with the initial ask of 50 million. 32 projects are local. So we had to pivot to be able to gain traction at the appropriations committee, and only 4 of the 36 projects were kept because there was a stern, it was like an imprimatur from the chair Regina Cobb that this bill is dead on arrival if we cap the local projects. So Kevin Adams worked with all of our directors, including Miles, with our 11 partners, MPOs and COGS, with RTAC, and come up with the updated list. And we do recognize that Chairwoman Cobb would support a transportation appropriation one time, but the projects need to be in the 5-year priority project list with ADOT. So in just a matter of like 2 days or less, Kevin and the rest of the directors of RTAC were able to come up with the updated list. So I guess I'm still heartbroken that there's no money coming in for our Lone Tree project, but there'll be money coming into our 180 highway, and of course Tuba City and Navajo Nation, Coconino County. However, this is I would call it an initial phase of asking dollars to our rural projects. Come next year, there will be new composition of the appropriations committee on both Senate and House at the state legislature. Then we will be able to bring back these local projects and hopefully gain more funding for our local projects, not only for MetroPlan, but for Fredonia to Yuma. So that's the spirit of Rural Transportation Advocacy Council. Thank you.
Kevin, do you have any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I think Regina and Miles covered it well. Just a couple of real quick comments. Yeah, what Chair Cobb's position is extremely disappointing. However, she is open to the inclusion of state projects with some of the surplus revenue that will be available to the legislature this year. And so while we pushed hard to get her to come off of her position on the local projects, at the same time, we now want to work with her in trying to maximize as much of the available revenue that the state has going to transportation infrastructure throughout greater Arizona. And so that is really what the focus is on for the remainder of this session. Chairman Cobb, we know as a fact, she won't be around next year. She will not be running for re-election. So if the revenue outlook is similar to this year, where there's going to be a very significant balance that the legislature will have to work with, I think our plan will be to come back next year and really have an emphasis on local projects in next year's budget. But for now, the focus is on trying to maximize the amount of state funding that goes to greater Arizona state projects. And in addition to the two projects that Miles had up on the screen, another one that may interest you is we have a rehabilitation project on I-40 in the Ash Fork area. That's at 9.7 million. So that should have an impact for your region as well, even though it's on the outskirts. And so right now, 2396 is technically dead. And our focus is already, we're not going to try to amend these projects onto another bill. We are working directly on inclusion of this list into the state budget. And so there's a package of about 12 bills that are part of that package. Typically, there's one that is titled the Capital Outlay Bill, and that is more than likely where you will see earmarks for transportation projects. We will try to keep this list intact and together for as long as possible. I think doing so gives all of the projects in the list more momentum, visibility, and just a lot more backing it. But at the same time, when we get to the drafting of the budget, much of it is going to come down to what the priorities of each legislator is and what it takes for them to be a yes for the entire budget package. And so for that reason, I would encourage you to continue to talk and urge your delegation to basically support the list, but also put that extra emphasis on supporting those projects that are the most important to your region. And that is a message that I'm giving to all of the regions across the state, because it will come down to how heavily each delegation supports the projects from their region. So please keep that in mind. And with that, I wanted to thank Councilmember Salas for making the trip to the Capitol. I know you've been down several times. That was great. I know Miles has come down for several meetings with individual legislators. That's greatly appreciated. I see Vinny from Simpo is also on the Zoom, and Vinny has also met with many legislators. So we've put the effort in, and we will keep it going. And with that, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Kevin. Do anyone else have any questions or comments about the funding update?
Chairman?
Yes, Jesse.
Kevin, it sounds like whatever we didn't get approved off the list that we submitted, it seems to me that those that we didn't get to were going to be resubmitted next year. Now, with that, is there room for additional project to be added on to that? That's my question.
Jesse, for this year, there's very, very limited room. There's sort of been a creep in the scope of this thing, and at some point we have to basically, not continue to amend. We've got to give the legislature a hard list to work with, although I can tell you that there are other projects across the Navajo country in the NACOG region as well. So there are some projects that I think impact the nation that don't necessarily impact MetroPlan. In fact, I was just on a meeting with White Mountain Regional Transportation Committee, and we've got a project out in the Pine Top Lakeside area as well.
Thank you very much, Chairman.
Okay, any other questions, comments? If not, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Miles is going to talk to us about a task force that's being set up. And Miles, I'll just let you take the lead on this.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'm still actually on the state and federal funding update, and the next item will very specifically deal with a task force. There's three major items. We just heard the first one. I want to give you a quick update on the RAISE grant, Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity. As you may recall, the city applied for almost $2 million grant for the downtown mile projects. And I put those projects up on the screen as reference. The grant was not won. And since that time, MetroPlan shifted with board support, $490,000 to the city to allow this downtown mile plan to be completed. And as just a quick reminder, it's critical because there's a $52 million Army Corps grant hanging in balance. We need to mitigate flooding risk. And then we need to solve other transportation projects in the area. So given that the city has funds needed to complete the downtown mile plan, the city is not applying for a RAISE grant this next round that's open now. And I completely understand their reasoning. However, I want the board to know that I'm considering having MetroPlan apply for a RAISE grant in 2022. And I'm going to be discussing that prospect with the Technical Advisory Committee, with the Management Committee next month, and I may bring it back to the board in April for you to consider if MetroPlan will actually apply. And if there are questions on that, please let me know. And if not, I'd like to move on to the next part of this federal and state funding update. Okay.
Miles, can I just provide the perhaps kind of not an update, it has already been reported a while back, but just circling back on our continuing efforts to seek state and federal funding for our Lone Tree Corridor. We still have 8 million. We still have 8 million that is coursed through the office of Congressman O'Halloran. So hopefully the funding will trickle down to the project pretty soon, but he still has his eye out for 8 million for the Lone Tree Corridor. Thank you.
Thank you. And since that just came up, I want to take the opportunity to share something that's in the report at the end of this agenda, but it's timely just to throw it out now. There's some Lone Tree corridor environmental planning work that MetroPlan is going to be doing. And what that has to do with is winning a competitive grant, getting an earmark, as Councilmember Salas is pointing out. We get the question, do you have environmental clearance? And, you know, if we can say yes, if we can say we have a categorical exclusion, which means the project is in a category that it's excluded from further environmental review, that makes us more competitive. That makes projects more likely to be funded and allows us to spend the money more quickly and get things done. So MetroPlan's doing a part to support that effort and to make us more competitive by doing some environmental work now so that we're closer to getting a categorical exclusion. And when granting agencies say, where are you at with environmental, we can give them a solid answer. So that's a quick update on that one. Councilmember Sells, I just want to see if there's anything else I missed that you were wanting to address in that item.
Just to echo the urgency of the downtown map project as very integral to the Rio de Flag flood control project, and with the Army Corps of Engineer moving forward with CMA, which is a construction management agreement. Is that what CMA means? So, and I'm very thankful for MetroPlan for taking the lead in this, and thank you for the initial funding of that the board approved a couple months ago to redirect funding for the downtown mall planning purposes. Thank you.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, I am going to move on to the next part of this, which is formula funding. And as I've shared with the board in recent months, a main point of focus, the place that I would say I'm emulating a terrier, not a terrorist, a terrier, and just really digging in, is formula funding. And I'm really happy to report that following a few weeks of requests and follow-ups, I do have some historic information on formula funds from ADOT and what has been distributed to MetroPlan. And as a reminder, formula funds are typically per capita, so they're population based, and we receive money based on our relative population within the state. And as it happens, the formula is not always precise. It's not always consistent. And I want to ensure that MetroPlan gets an equitable share of funds. So the slide up here has a few bullet points, and I'm just going to give you some other words, and that the bipartisan infrastructure law has the potential to be game changers, probably too strong, but significant. The bipartisan infrastructure law identified small NPOs like MetroPlan as a population band, right? We have standing for formula distribution, and that's great. Since prior, all distribution were at the discretion of ADOT. With these changes, we now have standing, but we still have a long way to go. And I know this is complicated and it's arcane and it's very bureaucratic, but it's so important to our funding stream. And it's likely that we will need your political input as a board, that I really need to share this information. Because the way the bipartisan infrastructure law is written, small MPOs have standing, but ADOT still has the authority to decide how funds are distributed. It doesn't just say MetroPlan X million in the Federal Register. And ideally, it would say MetroPlan X million in the Federal Register, but we're not that far yet. So ADOT still has authority to decide how funds are distributed. ADOT decides, and give me a second here with my notes. Thank you. ADOT decides how they're distributed and needs to consult, is the word, with small NPOs. And consulting is a pretty low bar. It's ranging from, hey, we're doing this and wanted to let you know, at the extreme, to how do you want to do this? And so that's kind of the bad news. But the good news is, and I just want to be really clear on that, is ADOT is us, right? We have good relationships with ADOT. Director Thompson serves on the State Transportation Board. We, Councilmember Salas and I and others, and Kevin Adam and Vinny, met with Councilmember Halakowski just about a month ago. And we have every reason to believe, trust, that our dialogue and consultation will be good. And at the same time, I assert that we can't take the dialogue and the consultation for granted. ADOT is understaffed, they're overstretched, demands for attention are really coming from everywhere. So it's my position that we need to make ADOT's job easier, and we need to help ADOT help us. So the next staff report and request for action is specifically about this point. And I get the sense that by what I just shared, I probably created more questions than I answered. And I apologize for kind of the flow of this. However, if it's okay with you, Mr. Chairman, it might be a good time to see if there's any questions and then move on to the next item, because it is an action item related to this topic.
So do we have any questions on this? I'm not seeing any in chat, so I think you can move on to the
And Jim, if I can, it's no questions. I'm sorry, I just got in from my other board meeting, and so I'm listening, and I'm back in attendance. So thanks, Jim.
well, thank you for being here. I did notice in chat that you got here.
Welcome, Supervisor Horstman. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just want to make sure, is it okay for me to go on to item D, Mr. Chair?
Yes, I think that sounds appropriate at this point.
Okay, thank you. I'm recommending that the board appoint me to a bipartisan infrastructure law interagency task force. That's basically the recommendation that I'm asking the board to take action on. And partnership is a key part of all this discussion. MetroPlan, we're one of 11 peers, councils of government, essentially in the state of Arizona. And if we count Maricopa Association of Governments and PAG, we really have 13 of these types of organizations. And I don't want to compete with our peers. I really want to join voices with them and really make one coherent request to ADOT. And in other words, there are elements of this new law that MPOs and COGs have in common, and some things we have in different. And I'm suggesting we inventory these perspectives, understand where the COGs and MPOs are, where we agree and disagree, and then try to make a joint recommendation to ADOT. Because by doing that, we don't put ADOT in a position of having to be arbiter for 13 different organizations. We can, I think, make it easier for everybody and make sure we're engaged in the process throughout. So in a recent meeting, COG and MPO directors discussed an approach for doing this. And essentially the idea is to form a task force, to appoint a task force leader, to charge them with putting together a request, hopefully by consensus, and then carrying that message in a coherent way to ADOT and keep everybody included. And I want to, at this point, thank Vinny Gallegos for participating as long as he has in this meeting and for being here today. And Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I want to point out that Vinny, who runs the MetroPlan counterpart in Prescott, the Central Yavapai MPO, also chairs the advisory group for RTAC, and also chairs all of the directors of all of the MPOs, including MAG and PAG, here in the state of Arizona. So Vinny has a lot of experience and standing, and he agreed to come in today and speak to this item. Mr. Chair, is it okay if I just turn it over to Vinny, or would you and the board like to ask questions first?
Well, why don't we let Vinny do his presentation, and then we can open it up to questions, because he may answer some of the questions that exist at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Miles. It's good to see many familiar faces and some new faces. If I haven't had the chance to meet you in person, Again, Vincent Gallegos, I go by Vinny. I'm the Executive Director of the Central Yavapai Metropolitan Planning Organization, or CYMPO, or SIMPO for short. And as Miles said, I also have the privilege of wearing a few other hats. So I come to you today representing the MPO and the COG directors of Arizona, Greater Arizona, and as Miles referenced, both out of Phoenix and Tucson, MAG and PAG. Miles did just a really good lead-in for me that, we've all been a part of the buzz with the new federal infrastructure bill. We're definitely, as your MPO and our MPO, very excited, doing the best we can to track and receive the information. I will say on some days it's definitely like drinking out of a fire hydrant. There's a lot of information coming out. And again, a real compliment to your executive director and Miles. He started off by saying, he's a terrier, and he really is in a good way. This is something obviously for your MPO, but as he voices many questions to ADOT, Federal Highways, FTA, it really is to the benefit of all MPOs and COGs. We have had the opportunity to meet, as Miles mentioned, I'm also the chair for the advisory committee of RTAC, and through Kevin's leadership and efforts, we were able to meet with the ADOT executive director, Halakowski, and his executive team. And again, RTAC is also trying as best we can to be proactive in ensuring that the money that is flowing is flowing in the best possible way. And I truly want to acknowledge too what Miles said, that we do have a great partnership with ADOT. We're not looking at a tense or a confrontational point by no means. But what I would say out of that particular meeting I just referenced, and there was quite a bit of not only the seniority in the room, but some long-term staff. There was some areas of funding that, as we discussed, the clarity wasn't there, and I think Director Halakowski and his staff, I'm not speaking against them in any way. They can speak for themselves, but they did acknowledge, that there needed to be a little bit more digging on some of these historical fundings and the source as to how it ends up at the MPO. The financial director had mentioned that she had inherited some particular formulas, and that her and her staff would, take a deeper dive, which again, Miles has definitely followed up with her and others. And the bottom line is, as this money travels down to the MPOs, if you will, are we getting what is really supposed to be happening? And again, some of these funds have been in place and the formulas have been in place for a while. So all to the point, the MPO and COG directors of Arizona, an association which I have the privilege of chairing, have decided that this is worthy of some additional time. It's the funding that's going to end up in our various work programs, our transportation improvement programs. And it's going to be incredibly important that our voice at the table is now, and that we have a very open dialogue with ADOT, Federal Highway Administration, FTA. And we thought the best way to do that was to go ahead and form what Miles is presenting to you today in this task force. And, since Miles, and maybe it's a bit dangerous to ask the questions, because then the rest of us, will quickly say, would you be willing to take on a greater leadership role? And that's, as I understand this item today, is Miles is looking to you as a board for that support. That's your action to take, but what I would ask on behalf of the MPO COG directors is that you do approve that request today. The task force will include Miles as a representative of the small urban MPOs. It'll include the directors from MAG and PAG, and it'll include a representative from one of the COGs. And again, this task force will be able to work together to dig into the federal infrastructure bill, look at historical funding, and look at what is anticipated to, or what should be coming to the MPOs and COGs. And it's our hope, with your approval, that not only would Miles be able to participate in that task force, but he would be able to chair that task force. It's also, and I think this would be my final point, the task force in of itself does not necessarily have an authority. It's a working group, but it would be a working group to bring that information back to, obviously, you as an MPO. In particular, though, the Arizona MPO COG directors. And it's our hope, with the findings of that task force, that we would then be able to, again, set up a meeting with the key decision makers of ADOT, FHWA, and FTA, and again, be able to ensure that the funding is going where it needs to go. So again, so happy to be here with you all. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. But I do appreciate your time and truly appreciate Miles' efforts, not only on behalf of MetroPlan, but on behalf of all of us. So thank you.
Thank you, Vinny. Does any board members have any questions about this proposal? So I'll go ahead and make a motion that we appoint Miles Melbeck to be the bipartisan infrastructure law interagency task force representative, that he represent MetroPlan.
I'll second, Mr. Chair, Regina.
Regina Salas seconds. Any just further discussion? Patrice, did you have a?
Jim?
No, no, I didn't hear the motion. If there's a motion in a second, I'm ready to vote.
So did you want me to repeat the motion? No, I think you wanted me to repeat it, like you didn't hear it. So let me just repeat it again. The motion is to appoint Miles Melbeck to be the bipartisan infrastructure law task force representative representing MetroPlan to this informal group. And we have a second from Regina Salas. And Jesse, did I hear your voice with the comment?
Yes, I just wanted to say that I certainly do appreciate all the support. That showed me a lot, and it showed a lot to the ADOT staff when we had our meetings there in Flagstaff. The administration and the board, they are very interested and very sincere about considering what the local government officials and even the people have to say. And with that, I also have been expressing to all the transportation organizations, including ADOT, that a lot of policies that were established over the years, the low and moderate income communities were not sitting at that table. That's why it's so difficult, to try to introduce various projects because a lot of those requirements or eligibility is really tough to overcome. So anyway, that's maybe one thing that we can all keep in mind. Is that's what I was saying, was there was a recommendation coming from Native American communities, and I believe that they're still establishing plans on how we need to proceed to the state legislature. So again, I do support the motion and the second that has been made. So thank you for listening to that comment.
Well, thank you, Jesse. Any other discussion before we have a vote? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion on the floor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Are there any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Miles. The next one is Miles going to give us an update on a couple things. Amtrak to start with. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Amtrak update. This is one that's hot and cold. And I had a great meeting just before the last board meeting in February. And I'm working to communicate with 2 other people at Amtrak. So it's moving along, not at this a speeding locomotive pace, but I am optimistic we've got the right connections now. And the whole point of this, was a quick reminder, is to get new or refurbished rail cars for the Southwest Chief as it runs from Chicago all the way to Los Angeles through Flagstaff, of course. The next item is the Sunshine Transport Solutions Corporation update. This is a group that was looking at a solar powered elevated transit system to be privately funded in our community. We talked about this a few times and the board approved me chairing steering committee. My view was, if the private sector can come in and provide amazing transportation solutions, and we want the finest transportation system in the country, well, by golly, let's give it a try. And we had a couple of meetings, and what it came down to is a steering committee identified some fatal flaws, some big items related to environmental and funding and other items that need to be addressed, and asked STSC to come back when they had those answers, and that the steering committee will reconvene if STSC brings us a report that addresses some of those very major concerns. So we'll see what comes of that. Right now, it's all on pause. I do just want to thank Councilmember McCarthy, who also served on that steering committee and has had quite a bit of communication with STSC. And Chair McCarthy, is there anything you want to say about that topic?
Yes, actually there is, Miles. I just want to point out that the city manager for Flagstaff last night at the council meeting did an informal poll of the council members, and we did not find support for moving forward with this idea. I think, if a more comprehensive proposal would be given, maybe they would, but at this point, the council is not supportive of this project. And the other council members on the phone here, if you have any comments, please chime in. Anyway, thank you, Miles. I guess you can continue.
Thank you. And in fact, the next 2 items, the raise grant opportunity, we already spoke about earlier. And there's the Lone Tree environmental review, that project tied to making us more competitive for the earmark, $8 million that we're pursuing, and other federal money. So that project is underway, and just wanted to give you an update. And that concludes item E.
Well, thank you. That was discussion, no action required. The next item, Jeff, I guess you'll take the lead on this, is about a possibility of changing our standard meeting time.
Sure, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Rosie, we squeezed this in at the last minute because it came to our attention over the weekend that the regularly scheduled board meeting, 10 to noon, first Wednesdays of every month, was maybe not the best going forward. So wanted to put this on the agenda today so the board could take action officially if you choose to. Also, I want to point out in my agenda review meeting with Chair McCarthy and Vice Chair Vasquez, they suggested I try to poll the board members before today's meeting so we could hopefully be more decisive. And I sent out a few choices, and really the 3 choices were keep things as they are, or move it to Wednesday afternoon or Thursday afternoon. And so far, the most feedback I've received is supportive of moving the meetings to first Thursdays of the month from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So I wonder if this is a decision we can make now, or if you have any direction for me and how we formalize this soon.
Well, I am fine with that proposal. Maybe I'll just go around the whole list here. Aronimo, would that work for you?
Yes, that's fine with me. Thank you.
Patrice Horstman?
Yes, thank you. Yes, that works for me, and thank you very much for considering this. I think I caused the problem here with a conflict that will be an ongoing conflict since I'm now chair for the Board of Supervisors, and thank you for this consideration.
It's our pleasure. We want you to be at our meetings. Aslan, are you okay with it?
You know, I am. I didn't have a problem with this meeting at the current time. I do appreciate afternoon meetings more, especially if we're going to be returning to doing these in person.
Right.
As we move forward. I imagine we're still going to have the remote capacity. But so that's not really too much of a consideration. But yeah, Thursday afternoons happen to work for me.
Okay. How about Tony Williams? We're changing things just when you get here.
Yes, the proposed time change will work fine with my schedule as well.
Regina Salas?
Yeah, I have a couple of conflicts in the next couple of months, but I will figure it out. So.
All right, so it sounds like you can make it work.
I've never seen that before. I've never seen an entire board just be totally open to a complete change of date and time of day. That's amazing.
Yes. How about Jesse Thompson?
I'm okay with it. And it's a kind of a challenging thing for me, but I'm okay with it. Early in the morning, I do my chores around the house and then feed my animals. And then when we get back into Flagstaff, having to go over there, if our meeting lasts 2 or 3 hours, it's going to be a little bit challenging for me to run back over here and take care of my business around the house. Other than that, just let you in on what I do, and I'm fine with it.
Okay. And Miles, I presume your staff is okay with it.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. I don't think we need a formal motion on this, but it sounds like we have a consensus. Like normal, it's not perfect for everyone, but we can make it work. Let's see. All right, so that's item F. I think I'm going to take a little license here and move on to item 5A. And before we go into executive session, that way the people that are not involved in the e-session, they could just leave the meeting and that will be the end of it, except for formal adjournment. If nobody has any objections, that's what I'd like to do. So this is the one where we do items from the board. The only thing that I have is I might mention that City Council is now going to in-person meetings, and in approximately a week, we will not even require masks. They'll still be allowed, they'll be optional, but they will not be required. So at some point, I would think that the MetroPlan board might consider if we want to continue these video meetings, or if we want to start making it optional that a person could either do video or come in person. The City Council is doing, we call it a hybrid, which you could come in person or you can do it by video if it's better for you. So Miles, is that something we should put on the agenda, or how do you want to handle that?
Yes, we will put it on the next agenda.
Okay, so we'll talk about that. So next time which will be April 6th, we will meet by video like we're doing now. And then after that, we'll see where we want to go, depending on how COVID's going, et cetera.
Mr. Chairman, I do just want to clarify, based on the last discussion, it won't be April 6th, which is a Wednesday. It's
Oh,
gonna be
right.
April 7th, from 1
I'm
o'clock to 3
sorry.
o'clock.
I'm sorry. All right, so what'll be the date again?
April 7th, 1 o'clock
April
to 3 o'clock.
7th. And that takes care of item 5B. So let's just do informal items to and from the board. I'll just start with Jesse Thompson. Let's go backwards this time. Do you have any items for the board, Jesse? Jesse, you still there? Or did you go behind the mountain?
Are you there?
Yeah,
Can you hear me now?
yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, I just can't say enough thank yous to all of you. There was a representation from MetroPlan and city and the Board of Supervisors. And to me, that's the first time that I've witnessed again that many people talking directly to the executive director and also to his assistant and to those of us that were able to be there, board members. Again, thank you to each one of you, and that's what I'm referring to as that demonstrates the interest and the sincerity about your plans. So again, to each one of you, thank you very much. That's all I have, Chairman.
The various meetings that we participated in are always appreciated on both sides. And thank you for having the Transportation Board meeting here in Flagstaff. That was a win-win for everyone concerned. Regina Salas, do you have any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I echo the gratitude to MetroPlan staff and in coordinating the State Transportation Board meeting a couple of weeks ago at City Hall. And also a quick public service announcement. So the City of Flagstaff is conducting some Zoom meeting for public engagement in visioning the future of the Thorpe Park Annex property. So this property is 8.5 acre, which is adjacent to within the regional Thorpe Park. So we're looking at the Zoom meeting tonight at 5:30 and Saturday at 11 o'clock. And information is available on the city website and as well as the city Facebook page. Thank you.
Thank you, Regina. Tony Williams.
I don't have anything today.
Well, thank you. Austin Aslan.
Nada.
Nada. Gracias. Patrice Horstman.
Yes, and I can just echo what is being said. It was great to see the Transportation Board up here in Flagstaff, at least some of them. And Jesse, it was so wonderful to see you in person. And I appreciate MetroPlan and the City of Flagstaff hosting that. And I thought it was a wonderful opportunity to meet with folks face to face and really appreciate that. So again, I want to thank the city for allowing us your wonderful space and for MetroPlan for getting the nice little brunch or donuts and bagels together. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Patrice. And Arano Esquez.
Thank you. Again, I'd just like to reiterate what all my colleagues have said about thanking the Transportation Board for coming and the opportunity to meet with them, and thank City of Flagstaff for hosting them for that meeting. It was nice to be able to meet in person and have some discussions around transportation. And then the only update or thing county-wise that I would add is that today at 1 o'clock, we'll be doing a special session about county redistricting. So There will not be public comment at this time, but you can listen in to or come in and view the special session of the board discussing local redistricting. There will be public comments forums available in the month of March, starting March 12th. So hope you can join in. Thank you.
Okay, any final comments before we move on? Hearing none, we're going to move to item 3G, which is an executive session under ARS 38-431-A4, which is for contract negotiations. So Jeff, you won't be involved in this meeting. It will only be board members. And then Mandia, are you going to, how do you do this? Is you going to make a breakout group or?
Correct. Same as last time, I'll place you all in a breakout room, and Rhonda Cashman from Mountain Line just joined and she will be taking notes.
Okay, and I would say if anybody wants to go get a quick coffee, we'll maybe wait about 4 or 5 minutes before we actually start business on that. Kind of have a little brief. Thank you, Kevin. And then I guess we'll be coming back in to formally adjourn and to see if we have any comments following the e-session. Okay, so Mandia, do your thing.
Give me just a minute here.
Okay.
It looks like everybody's in there except Patrice. Oh, hey, Rhonda.
Hey, they forgot to do the motion again. in
Oh, sure.
Session. So if you want to just pull them out.
No problem.
Come back from their break, they can do that and then.
That
Okay.
sounds good. I'll close all the rooms and that should work.
Thanks. Hi, Miles.
Hi, Rhonda.
We're back. That was a quick session. Just
All right.
It looks like we are just waiting for maybe Jesse.
Jesse, okay.
Yes. It's like he's still in the breakout room. See if I can move him.
I apologize to everybody. I'm new at this. As soon as I figure it out, I'll probably retire.
Well, it doesn't look like I can move Jesse out
Why
of
don't we,
the session.
I think we'll just go ahead and make the motion. Jesse, we have a quorum. So I will move that we go into executive session under ARS 38-431-A4 for contract negotiations. Could I get a second?
Second, I'm assuming it's A1 and A4 you're going in. One is personnel and one is advice from legal counsel.
Well, are Our legal,
If you will just move into executive session, I'll second it.
okay. Yeah, our lawyer told me I should do it as an A4, contract negotiation, so that's what I did.
Okay.
So anyway, so you seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. We're now going to go into breakout session. I'm going to go into the other room. I'll be right back.
Are we going to get a notice for the breakout session?
You know, I was
Jim
looking
literally left
for
the room.
that. Oh, it's giving me a countdown again. You know what? I'm going to create a second room and just move you guys over there if that works for everyone.
That sounds great.
Okay.
And unfortunately, both Supervisor Vasquez and myself are going to have to leave early because we have to be in person at the boardroom for our Board of Supervisors redistricting meeting. And so we're going to have to leave before just before 12:30. So.
Okay, should see a e-session room 2. Sorry about that. Just moved you all over there.
So we're still working on that.
Yeah, we're still in the main room. You all should be moving to the e-session in a minute.
It's showing me that you're on the list, but I don't know why it's not moving you. Give me just a moment. Sorry about this.
All right.
Chair McCarthy, while we're
Yes.
waiting, it looks like there's someone on the phone. Do you know if that is, if that's Jesse Thompson that's on the phone?
Yes.
That's me.
Okay,
Yes. So that's legit.
so for the minutes, just so I have that, thanks.
And we're still trying to transfer over, is that correct?
Correct. And none of you see an option for e-session 2. Is that correct?
No, don't say anything. All right. Jeff, I guess Jeff's on here now. I don't know, we still have a quorum. I'll make a couple of quick comments and then we'll formally adjourn. Jeff, we had some negotiations and a lot of questions. And so we're gonna probably have to meet again as the board to finalize an agreement with you. And I'll be in touch with Brandon about some legal questions. And I guess that's all I really need to say for now. Our goal is to resolve this and formalize the contract in open session at the next executive board meeting, if that's possible. That's our goal. And I think we can do that. So does anyone, including Jeff, have any comments or questions? If not, I'm going to formally adjourn the meeting. Hearing nothing, we are hereby adjourned. Thank you, everyone involved.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye, Jeff.